Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of TASB Talks. We are back again and ready to give you the latest happenings and insights into Texas public education. I'm your host, Matt Mitchell, Senior Communications Specialist here at TASB, and today I'm joined, as always, by Doc Gonzalez, Division Director of TASB Governmental Relations, and another new face to the show, Whitney Broughton, Assistant Director of TASB Governmental Relations. How are y'all both doing today?
Morning, Matt. Doing really well.
Thanks for having me on.
So let's just kind of jump right into it. It's been about 3 weeks now, I think 3 weeks to the day since the election, and I just wanted to touch on a few things that will impact public education. So first and foremost, obviously nationally, vouchers and ESA propositions were a big public education issue on many statewide ballots, and I was just curious how they fared elsewhere.
Yeah, Matt. Well, there were three states that had vouchers on the ballot. In two of those, Kentucky and Colorado, voters decided to prohibit the use of public funds being used for private institutions of education. And both of those states rejected those propositions by pretty significant margins.
Sizable margins.
In Kentucky, it was 65% to 35%, which is pretty significant in any election.
30 points is a good race.
It was a little closer in Colorado, 52 to 48. That's a little more consistent with what you might find in
over 2 points
in
is
other
good.
In other elections. But in Nebraska, they actually repealed, the voters there repealed their voucher program. That one was a 57 to 43 margin in Nebraska. So the three states that had the issue up on the ballot, all three said that we would prefer not to have some kind of ESA or voucher program. So that was a big takeaway from election night because, you know, we heard a lot about school choice here locally in Texas, and not a lot during the primaries. We didn't hear about from all the flyers that we got sent to us throughout
border.
Yeah, it was all the border issue. But once the elections were over, there was a lot of talk about school choice and what might happen coming up. And you know, we saw not too much change in the overall makeup of the House and the Senate. I think Republicans picked up a couple of seats in the House in the state House to, I think, from 86 to 88 folks in the House. And in the Senate, I think it went from like 18 to 19. So, and there's only like 31 senators. So it's not, you know, that's why.
19 is the threshold,
Yes.
though, for majority right now in the rules.
Or then did it go 19 to 20 then?
Maybe.
I think it was 19 to 20. So anyway, so while the overall majorities didn't change, of course, we know that folks that opposed vouchers last session, a lot didn't make it out of the primaries, whether they resigned or they lost in the primaries. So we'll just see what happens, you know, this coming session. There's plenty of other issues to work on. Primarily school funding is a huge one, and one that I think a lot of our members can no longer wait for assistance. They couldn't wait last session, and now the situation is even worse. And at this point, it's funding is first and foremost in their minds because they are struggling mightily out there.
So we've got our work cut out for us, it sounds like, moving forward.
Oh, yeah. In fact, how many bills so far, Whitney?
As of right now, TASB's tracking 696 out of 1,900 bills filed-ish.
Now, also on the ballots, some important races. State Board of Education, obviously here in Texas. How did those races go? Anything in particular that stood out?
We have some faces that are leaving. We have a SBOE member that's actually joining the Texas House in the Dallas area.
That's Aisha Davis, yeah.
Yes. So she will be moving down Congress Avenue from the TEA building down to the State House. So we had one retire, Melissa Ortega, and then Pat Hardy, who has been on the board for many, many years, did not make it through her primary and is being replaced by a younger gentleman. He'll probably be the youngest face on the SBOE we've had in a long time.
So speaking of SBOE, I heard last week was kind of a big week. I heard you were maybe there.
All day, every day.
Well, would you mind kind of filling us in on what all went down last week?
Absolutely.
I know it was a lot.
So last week was eventful. They had a full week of meetings. Normally, they're only there for 3 days, and instead they started on Monday at 1 and lasted till about 6 p.m. on Friday. So it was a long 40-hour slog of making moves. They started off with about 12 hours of testimony on EMRA products and things that were going to be blessed by the SBOE as meeting requirements for high-quality instructional materials. That went halfway, some for, some against what was being proposed. I think anyone can look on the web and see the name Bluebonnet and read up on what those instructional materials entailed. And the public testimony was great. There was a wide variety of voices and opinions being brought The members asked very poignant questions, really dug in. The vote on Friday, it's a little odd in that they vote on Wednesday, they vote on Tuesday for what they did on Monday, but then they re-vote on Friday to affirm what they did in the committee of the whole. So it's parliamentary, just so much fun. So on Tuesday, when they voted on IMRA, they had the same vote on Friday of 8-7 adopting the Bluebonnet section, and they pulled the Bluebonnet section out of the overall vote on IMRA. So they made a list of blessed, approved items and items that have no action. That's a little different than how 1605 was set up. It was supposed to be approved and not approved. So they did kind of take a path C, which there's already bills filed to remedy that, meaning that if anything is on a rejected list, you as a school district cannot use it at all. Our big shebang was on Wednesday. We had rules regarding school board training of who is able to grant credit for school board training hours. On top of that, they added background checks in an attempt to ensure those that are training are above board and providing the best information in the best way possible to school board members. There was a lot of amendments. There was a lot of change that happened from last meeting to this meeting, from Wednesday to Friday. We had a lot of wordsmithing on the floor, on the fly, and we are digging through what actually went down. And there is a short on-ramp of mid-February-ish of when this will have to be turned on and going. So in the next few months, TASB staff will be working on our registration to make sure that we're all ready to go to keep offering everything that we offer now. But we're also going to be working on what this looks like moving forward. There was a lot of promises at the end of the day that we're going to be talking about this again in January at their next meeting. But if we're talking about it in January, that's first reading. Second reading would be the next meeting in March, and implementation would be after that. So this rule that they just passed this past week will go into effect and then be changed, essentially.
Sounds like you had a really long week then.
Very long.
Did you get a chance to recharge over the weekend a little bit?
So much football.
Yeah, me too. And that's my average weekend, except I'm not going to, meetings all week the week before. But other than that, same thing.
Absolutely.
So kind of moving off of SBOE now as we kind of wrap up this episode. We wrap up all of our episodes. We usually like to take a look at what's coming up in the legislature, the week ahead, weeks ahead. So just anything as we kind of head into this holiday week. I would imagine it might be kind of quiet this week, but then kind of, after Thanksgiving, anything coming up that we should sort of keep an eye on?
I mean, we're in the midst of bill filing. We're getting about 50 bills filed a day. Most of them are not education, but we're still ebbing and flowing. They'll shut down on Wednesday and come back on Monday. Definitely next week, as everyone's coming back with the intent that we are getting ready for session. Full weeks are happening. Members are coming back into town. Austin is alive again. You need reservations for all meals.
And on that note, as we kind of head into session, we will be back with more episodes. I think we'll try to do probably one or two more before we break for the Christmas holiday. So stay tuned for that. And thank you all for being here. Really appreciate you taking the time this week of Thanksgiving. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. As always, make sure you subscribe to TASB Talks wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, wherever that may be. And we will see you next time.